It was the middle of 2018. I was 23 years old and had driven down to Vermont to visit my family and stay for a few weeks. While I was there, I also wanted to do some camping, since my parents' house was just outside the Appalachian Mountains. Back when I still lived with them, I would go out there all the time, but since moving away, I hadn't had the chance to go camping or even hiking. There was one particular place that had been on my mind for quite a while. Just before I moved out, I found a trail mentioned on a forum for people who explored abandoned structures, and I'd been wanting to check it out ever since. This trail supposedly led to an old lodge sitting deep in the forest. So on a Monday morning, I drove out to the area. I parked on the side of the road since the trail wasn't marked or anything official. It was clearly just a rough path made by random explorers like me who wanted to see the abandoned lodge. The trail was very overgrown though, and it looked like no one had been down there in quite some time. The hike itself took just under 2 hours, and although the trail was mostly flat, it was a difficult walk because of all the weeds and bushes growing into the path. But I eventually made it. My plan was to camp inside the lodge, simply because I thought it would be fun. Still, I came prepared with a tent and gear in case the lodge was too damaged or unsafe to stay in. Good thing I did, because just from the outside it was obvious that the place wasn't safe to sleep in. Most of the roof was gone, caving inward on itself, and the logs making up the walls were covered in thick vines and mold. The door was wide open though, so I peeked my head inside to look around. The smell was awful, and with so much of the interior decayed and falling apart, there wasn't much I could actually explore. There was a door at the far end of the main hallway that looked like it was still intact, and I wanted to check it out, but the floor looked far too sketchy to risk walking over. So I ended up backing out of there. I didn't have any other plans, but with the sun already starting to set, I began searching for a good place to set up camp. There really weren't many choices, so I simply walked about 200 feet away from the lodge and cleared a small spot to pitch my tent. As the sun set, darkness slowly covered the distant lodge until I couldn't see it anymore, and the sounds of the forest changed into crickets and the soft crackling of the small campfire I built. I really wanted to stargaze, but the area was surrounded by towering trees that blocked most of the sky. On top of that, it was partially cloudy. So instead, I sat by the fire, tossing sticks into the flames and letting my mind wander until I heard something. I'm not really sure how to describe the sound, but it was pretty loud, maybe wood bending or creaking. And even though I couldn't see the lodge anymore, the noise came from the exact direction where I knew the lodge stood in the dark. It only lasted a few seconds, but gave me chills. Maybe it was just the old wood shifting in the wind, or maybe it was something else. I sat quietly and listened for nearly half an hour, but didn't hear anything more. It was only about an hour into the night, but I knew that if I didn't check it out now, I wouldn't be able to sleep. So I figured I might as well go investigate while it was still early in the night. I threw more sticks onto the campfire to keep it going before I left, so I wouldn't have to rebuild it later. Then I grabbed my small LED lamp and walked toward the lodge. After just a minute of walking, the structure appeared faintly in the light. It looked every bit as creepy as I expected. I approached it cautiously, passing a few broken windows while holding my lamp up to see inside. Even with the light, it was so dark that I could barely make out anything. When I reached the door, I froze for a moment. It was shut. Less than 2 hours ago, I had left it wide open. Then I noticed something else strange. There were scratches along the front of the door, like from nails or maybe a knife. I hadn't seen them before, so I wasn't sure if they had always been there or if they were fresh, and maybe the cause of the noise I heard. I stood there for a moment debating whether I should even try opening it or if I should just leave. But the decision was pointless because when I finally tried to open the door, I couldn't. It felt like something on the other side was holding it shut. Feeling deeply unsettled, I didn't stick around any longer. I backed away from the lodge and hurried into the woods toward my campsite. But right away I noticed something was wrong. Other than the light from my lantern, there was no other glow coming from the forest. I started moving faster, hoping I was still headed in the right direction. Luckily I was, and within a minute I found my way back to the tent. A thin column of smoke rose above the campfire, as if someone had just put it out while it was still burning. I stood there, holding my lantern up, straining to see anything in the darkness between the trees. "Hello? Hello? Who's out there?" I called. No one answered. A chill ran through me again. I knew the hike back to my car was only 2 hours, so I quickly decided to pack up and leave. I took down the tent as fast as I could, and while I stuffed the last few things into my backpack, I heard a sound close by. I stopped, held up the lantern, but still couldn't see anything. The sound was strange. It was someone laughing. Quiet, soft, not like laughing with friends. It was the sound of a single person chuckling under their breath, watching me from the shadows like they were completely insane. I hurried, leaving scraps behind and racing for the trail. My lantern was cheap and dim, making it really difficult to follow the path, but I did the best I could. A few times I stopped, sure I could hear the faint laughing again and afraid that I was being followed. But whoever was stalking me out there, they blended perfectly with the darkness. I never once caught sight of them. I finally reached the road, got into my car, and drove away fast. Looking back at that night 7 years later, it still stands as the most terrifying and disturbing experience of my life. I don't think anyone can really understand the helplessness I felt, alone in the forest at night, stalked by some deranged stranger. Maybe they had made that abandoned lodge their home. I honestly don't know. But after everything I saw and felt out there, I don't think anyone should ever go back to find out.